Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochran, and we've got a great show lined up for you today. It's been a couple of weeks since we did this. I was in visiting my folks, and then just the 4th of July weekend, just completely compounded 2 weeks in a row of no shows. But I'm glad to be back here in the saddle and on forward. I don't think we're going to see any breaks for a while. But Rob, good morning. How are you this morning?
Doing fantastic, Todd. It has been a couple of weeks. It seems like it's been forever since we've done a show. It's like the whole world has spun a few times since we've done this.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it's been a little while since we've had Andrew on as well, for Andrew Zarian from the guys from Queen Network. And I tell you, I think the last time you were on, Andrew, we were still doing the tech part of this versus the new media when we decided to change the direction of the show. So welcome to the new show.
Thanks a lot. I'm glad to be here.
And I have to say, your set is looking beautiful as ever. Nice colors and everything. So
a lot of lights. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors here.
Well, I think when we all do our little back behind the scenes tours and show what the sets really look like outside of the exterior of the camera shot, I don't think anybody's surprised. But yeah, smoke and mirrors.
Well, that's what you have to do. I mean, that's the beauty of the internet. You know, there's no live studio audience. There's for all you know, there could be just sheetrock walls, empty walls all around me, and I just have one wall done.
Yeah, it's all a facade, right? It's just like Hollywood. Just like Hollywood. It's all Costco LED lights, right? Is that what all this is?
Yeah.
That's it, $39.99. That's all you need to do.
Or he has the best green screen going from a keying standpoint.
Yeah, it looks almost like 3D green screen. Yeah.
I played with those live sets that they have available where you can actually let me switch this back, where you can actually have the you're immersed in a set, and it never looks quite right. It always looks just a little bit hokey, but
you always have this.
Go ahead, Rob.
This whole halo going around your head all the time. Yeah, unless you have the lights pointed to the top of your head or right behind you, it's like you have this weird kind of thing around your body, and it's like that doesn't look quite right.
Well, it's one thing is you always watch out for is, if you're watching a newscast or something and someone forgets to have wore something that doesn't key completely.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And matter of fact, there went Andrew. He
I'm gone?
Your video's gone.
Huh.
And that's another thing too, is you watch for a little technical difficulties, just like
Bye, Andrew.
And he's really gone.
Yeah, he didn't really want to be with us today anyway.
Oh man, don't you just love Skype? It's just absolutely fantastic.
So Todd, are you using a new chat room too? Because I noticed something different in there that popped up saying that I had been mentioned or something like that. It was really it was like a little pop-up window that came up in the chat room. So it was really interesting.
I don't know. I didn't.
So something got upgraded, because I've never seen that before.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway.
Oh, someone's saying something was going on with the stream.
Yeah, it says that hearing a delay in the stream. It's like a repeat or something like that.
Really? Is there a feedback loop going on? You guys hearing? You hearing double audio? The guys in the chat room were saying they're hearing double audio.
Hey, Mr. Andrew, welcome back.
That was bizarre. Skype just totally crashed.
Huh.
The beauty of
that's weird. So you guys in the chat room are they're hearing some double audio. Remember when we had that double audio problem, Rob, a long time ago?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I think we've had every possible situation happen to us on this show.
Yeah, and it concerns me because when we have double audio, I'll have a master, but I don't know why we're hearing. I wonder if they're getting feedback. Where could they be getting feedback from?
I don't know.
You
I
know,
mean, I just listened back, Todd, and the audio is very, very low on the live stream.
oh, it's very low. Well,
Very, very, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, this is the first time we've used YouTube, so. Well, let me crank it here.
Can you ramp that gain up?
Oh yeah, I can really ramp the gain on the stream, so that should make a difference. So you guys on the chat room, let us know if the audio gets better. And but yeah, I just cranked it a whole bunch, so that should help those guys in the chat room. And let me turn this off. I wonder if that's giving some feedback. So Andrew, how you been? What's been happening with you're listening to it? How's it sound?
Let me say this. I mean, there's a significant delay with the YouTube stream.
Yeah.
Let me try resetting it.
And that's what.
It's like 4 minutes behind.
Really? Yeah, that sucks when it's like that far behind. Well, I cranked it way up, so it should be getting better for the guys. I wonder why it's so delayed on Ustream. YouTube. Why it's so far behind?
Yeah, it's hard to say. So are we also on Ustream right now too?
No, we're strictly on.
we're not.
Strictly on YouTube. Yeah.
Oh, we are. Okay.
Yeah, when we have more than two people in the Skype room, I can't use the other stream to push. So
it's better. I mean, the audio is better that you cranked it up.
yeah, I put it up full 10 decibels, so it did, or at least 10 on the scale on the TriCaster. So hopefully that helps. So Andrew, how you been? What's been happening over at GFQ? What's been going on over there?
Things are good. You know, busy adding shows and producing shows. It gets awful in the summer because it's so hot in the studio. That's something that we constantly face here, where I don't want to run the air conditioner while I'm doing the show, so I pretty much have to suffer in 90-degree heat while I'm doing the show. But things are going good. We're adding some shows in August where we do some testing, and then in September we unveil new shows.
Well, one thing that we do, I do here, and my challenges with the heat are the same, but I'm lucky enough that about 90% of the time I have good trade winds, and where I live, it's quiet enough. I can leave a window open on one side when I do my evening recordings. In the daytime, it's a little tougher because then I have to, pull the shades to blacken the room, and then the air doesn't get through. So I rely on I have a fantastic high-speed, low-sound, couple of ceiling fans in here that just run full blast, and that helps move the air. So just look around for very low noise, and then you can buy them that they hardly make any noise whatsoever, and they do move enough air. And
I want to get one of those Dysons, those bladeless Dysons, and just put them all over the studio.
Yeah. And have your hair ripped.
Yeah, Costco again, right? Just swing over to Costco and pick up a couple of those.
It's like $400, for a fan.
Yeah. So, there's been a lot happening in the space. I think we've been watching, some changes here recently with some announcements being made. And so what do you see going on in the New York scene? We don't hear too much about what's going on in New York, and what's going on with the whole new media scene there. Where's it evolved to?
That's a really good question, because I was just talking to someone about that literally like last night, about how it always seems like it's happening on the West Coast. Everybody's doing this on the West Coast. And here on the East Coast, really, I've run into a lot of, significant, broadcasters that do stuff from New York, and you kind of know their names, and, there's studios here in New York that people are doing broadcasts. But as far as the everyday internet broadcaster, the everyday podcaster, I find it difficult to find people. I've always had that issue with finding people in New York. When Blog World came here, a lot of people come, but a lot of people are from out of state. I'm actually, I'll say I'm a little disappointed that I have not been able to find more people in New York doing this.
Do you think it's partly because, let's just face it, costs of rent so high, people don't have enough room? Do you think that's affecting, people's ability to, want to launch some shows? And they said, where do I do this in my 900 square foot studio, which or an apartment or whatever, condo that just, it cost me $1 million already. Why do I want to waste a 10 by 10 space for something? Or do you think that's part of it?
I mean, that could possibly be part of it, but it's, I ran into someone and they actually do a show for me, and I happened to stumble on their podcast, and they tweeted me. This is like 2 years ago, and it turned out that they literally live 3 blocks away from me, and they've been doing an internet broadcast for 10 years, a comedy-based internet broadcast for 10 years. So I think that there are people doing this, but they haven't figured out how to find other people that are doing a podcast or internet broadcast, because everybody's doing a podcast nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, every stand-up comic is doing a podcast. Everybody that's into technology is doing a podcast. So why is it so difficult to find someone in your area to kind of, connect with and talk to and kind of trade war stories?
Yeah, I think we see it here in Hawaii too. When the whole space kind of kicked off, the new media space kicked off, there was about a dozen that were really into it. They were really doing a lot of content. One of the guys, matter of fact, this was during the time that the Lost television show Lost was hot and heavy. And, this guy was doing 500,000 subscribers per episode. So, he was doing fantastic. When Lost ended, that show ended. And so he kind of had to digress, basically find a new path. And that's always the risk in doing content that's so focused like that. But I think that there's still maybe a core of a handful. So, Rob, where do you think most, you're seeing a lot of, you're still working, the Microsoft side and seeing, people coming in and submitting their shows. Where are a lot of these shows originating? Do you even know?
Well, I think there's a couple things going on, I think, with that, because I have the same kind of thoughts when I think about what's going on here, even in the Seattle market for podcasting. And I think it's pretty indicative, I think, of what's happening around the country and around the world, is that people tend to be really focused on just doing what they're doing, and they just don't take time to connect with others that are like-minded in their areas. They tend to think a little bit more national, so they don't really think too much local. I know that's gone on here off and on for a while, and it really takes some extraordinary effort by local, like a core group of local people to try and round these folks up. And oftentimes it's very difficult to identify a particular podcaster as living or originating in a particular area, because they don't really say it in their like on their website, or it's just really, really difficult to sometimes know what shows are originating from where, unless they put it out there. So I think that's part of it. As far as what's being submitted to the Zune catalog, I'm seeing a huge upswing in podcasts coming in from around the world, global podcasts. One's coming in from Russia, Hong Kong, Taiwan. I mean, I'm just seeing that's actually the bulk of the activity now, is podcasts really from outside of the United States, and also podcasts from in the United States that are focused on trying to reach a global audience that are in like maybe Mandarin or Russian, or those kind of languages. I think it's kind of a hidden thing right now. I did a podcast in my own podcast. I did a 2-part kind of 2 episodes session on the global expansion of podcasts, and because I'm seeing it firsthand. I mean, the truth of the matter is that the Zune catalog is not a global catalog. It's U.S. only, but yet I'm seeing just this huge upswing in content providers around the world getting into podcasting right now.
It's kind of curious too, and I know that obviously I focus on the local. I mean, not on the local, the national. And I don't really ever worry about the local. Matter of fact, I get asked. I did this interview. Let me see if I can. I came back from L.A. for a specific reason. I came back from L.A. with
Oh, you got it's the glasses.
With glass. Of course, I got him with the shades on. We were at the beach yesterday, and I was taking pictures of girls in bikinis. No, I'm just kidding.
I think that's what most people are doing with those things.
And it's actually, we'll get into that whole topic. Don't let me forget. I'll tell you about that topic. So what was I talking about? The being national on the show, right? So
yeah.
I got sidetracked by bikinis. So
that'll happen. Happen.
It's really, if you look at the where things are at and what we're seeing on our stats, China is just exploding. I mean, I'm like, where are all these? And I don't know if it's expats, if it's Chinese that are actually listening. I don't know where all they're coming from, and we don't get any feedback from them. And that's one of the challenges is, okay, who are these people? And, and are they actually listening to American-based podcasts? And I think they are, if nothing else, to learn English as a second language, maybe.
Yep, that's exactly what they're doing. Yeah,
something that I've noticed over the last maybe the last 6 months or to a year is that more non-techie people are getting involved in podcasts, and I'm not talking about the comedy podcasts, which everybody's doing, and in the technical stuff. I'm talking about every regular day people doing a podcast. One of my friends, she doesn't do podcasting, she doesn't really listen to podcasting. She got into it because she got pregnant, and she started doing a weekly, 20-minute podcast on how it's going for her in her pregnancy. And the thing has gotten really big. And she said she's getting like 1,000 downloads a week. And this is someone that has no concept of analytics and SEO and a website. She just started putting it out there and people are watching it. So I think stuff like that is going to be almost like the future of what everyday podcasts are going to be like. It's going to be very niche, very specific audiences that are tuning in to watch these things. How many tech podcasts are there? I'm sure.
Oh, there's a just
Todd. I mean, Todd firsthand, there's a lot of them. So
there's a lot.
It's gonna. But let me ask you guys this: do you think, in order for podcasting to become a mainstream thing, do we need the big multi-million-dollar companies starting to do a podcast for their shows, or do we need the everyday person doing a podcast?
Well, I think the big multimedias are already doing. The news networks for sure are already doing shows. So that is, that's already happening. So,
yeah, I agree. I think that's.
Where do you think that's? Sorry, Rob. Where do you think that's taking podcasting? Is it hurting us in the long run, or is it helping us to get more of a mainstream exposure?
I think it depends on what they're doing with it. I think if they're making original programs, it's probably helping. But if they're just repurposing broadcast, then I don't believe that it's helping us that much. In some ways, it kind of muddies the water around the perception of podcasting. I think in the long run, I think you're going to look at podcasting as an audio medium primarily, which it really already is, but it's had quite a few video podcasts in it. It feels like it's moving definitely more towards audio. And I think as you think about what's happening with broadcast radio right now, and you think about what's happening with audio coming into the car through apps and things like that, which is definitely on the path pretty aggressively right now, I think over the next 5 years, is that it just feels like more and more people are going to be jumping into the fray. But the problem that I think the industry faces right now is that we have to get more listeners. There's going to be a tipping point where we're going to get to is we're going to have so many shows spread across a fairly small group of listeners, and nobody's going to get a huge, large audience. So somewhere down the line, there's going to need to be an explosion of usage, and that's the part that I'm kind of worried about is what's the catalyst that's going to push the audience growth. It may have to be some like a Howard Stern or somebody like that gets into the space, or a big celebrities that actually drive that audience adoption, and pushes it beyond its current state of like half of the online user base. So that's kind of what I think is going on.
One thing I see is from my, top view down is that I think the listeners are here.
Yeah, but not in the scale that we need.
Well,
I think that's the thing.
Well, but
I don't know, we lost Andrew again.
Did we? Oh, shit. Wait till he gets back, and then I'll make a comment. So
Sure.
Yeah, him pushing HD might actually be bouncing him off. But it seems the video was good when he was on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let me see if he gets back, and then we can continue this train of thought. I want him to kind of hear some of the stuff that we're seeing. One of our new clients, where we get to see basically what they're doing, and they're I would safe to say they're the largest podcast network that's using our stats, commercial podcast network that's using our stats.
Mm-hmm.
They're reaching an incredibly large audience. And I was just saying, Andrew, that one of our commercial clients that we just signed and then just started using our stat system, which is the largest basically podcast network. Actually, we're going to have a press release about it next week now that we're actually up and running with them. Their audience is just incredible. But what we see from an aggregate standpoint, I think we see between 60 and 65 million people, uniques, tuning in to podcast every month. Now the question there is that's probably up 20 million from 2 years ago. So we're seeing growth rates.
Yep.
But the question then is 65 million across you do the math, 65 million across 25,000 shows, or I wouldn't even think there's that many total really active shows. If you look at GFQ, you look at TPN, and you look at frequency rates and how often people are creating content, I think, that number would be smaller. I don't even know what the total number of active shows are. But
yeah, and that's also a problem for the industry too, is we just don't know what kind of scale that the industry has right now.
Yeah.
We just don't know.
And we're going to do some new tests here soon to try to kind of come up with that number, but still 65 million across the entire planet, listening to, mostly English-based content. Even though some of those Chinese shows are pretty large numbers. I don't know. I think. Go ahead.
There's only going to be growth from here, though. I
True.
mean, that's the positive thing. We haven't seen a
that's right.
slowdown. Like other things have seen. Television, many shows on cable have seen a major slowdown in ratings and growth. And when it comes to podcasting, it's only going to continue to grow at this point because we are in the infancy of the technology. It's been around for the term podcast, I guess, has been around for like 8-9 years. But the concept of watching people do a broadcast live on anywhere you go, I mean, that's a new concept, and that's going to continue to grow as people discover, internet broadcasting and podcasting.
I think the reason the numbers have grown rapidly too is the mobile part. Now we're not stuck with having to download. The only time I download shows anymore and have them pre-cached is if I'm getting on an airplane to go somewhere. As a matter of fact, I forget to do it, and I usually am at the airport in the lounge saying, "Oh man, I need to download a couple of shows," because what I do now is I just go to the app, find the show, and I hit play. I don't necessarily sync anything anymore. That's not the way, and I'm sure that has to be responsible for the large portion of the growth. Although the numbers don't bear out the mobile growth as much as you think it would. It's been significant, and there's definitely this type of a shift from the desktop, where the more mobile people are listening than, there has been that shift, but the desktop still is incredibly important as well.
Yeah, the shift is going to continue as more and more people get 4G access. That plays a huge part in people being able to access our content. A lot of people don't have the ability to download a 40 meg or 50 meg podcast at a decent rate.
I think on most mobile phones, even on 3G, you still probably can, for most audio shows, you definitely could play it live on demand, or I don't like to use the word stream because we're streaming right now on YouTube, and we could be streaming via a Shoutcast server, but it's from the general standpoint, the public doesn't know the difference. So when they click on something, they're streaming a show or watching a show. The mechanics aren't important. The definitions aren't important. It's just that I don't care as long as they hit play.
Playing it
Yeah,
plays.
you're right.
Yeah.
I'll rephrase that. Also, with more people getting used to accessing content on their phones with 4G, I think it's going to be easier for people to discover us.
And I think people are also getting more comfortable with their bandwidth usage. I thought I said, oh man, I'm a power user, I'm going to have trouble. And I look at my usage every month and I kind of laugh. And I'm a power user on 5 different devices, so.
One other thing that's coming that hasn't really hit yet is what's going to be the impact of these big radio broadcasters when they finally decide to jump on board here. And they have some challenges in making that jump, and it's really been something that I don't believe that the podcasting side has really talked about is the elephant in the room is the big radio broadcasters, right? Once they decide to move this direction and change their model a little bit, I'm not quite sure what the impact is going to be. I'm not sure that anybody really can answer that 100%. But I've been doing a lot of thinking about the kind of broadcast radio side and podcasting and how that convergence is actually going to happen. And it's really fascinating because they have challenges, and I'm sure that both of you guys have opinions on this. But if you think about what they're doing around content, is that they typically make content so people, really like 3 hours per show kind of content, right? That doesn't play well in podcasting, right? And on demand radio, right? It's shorter programs play well on the podcasting side. So for them to be successful, I mean, they have a fair amount of voice talent and talent, right? That could be pointed at this space and had an impact. I mean, really, really drive a lot of audience, especially when they do some co-promotion and things like that with the broadcast side. I think that there's a huge opportunity for them. The challenge that they have is local versus national, local versus global, and then also formats of shows, because they're producing content for tune-in and tune-out scenarios that are not issues with podcasting. And they may have to create 2 separate pieces of content, one for the online side and one for the radio side, for them to be successful in this area. I'm not sure that just taking the broadcast show that they do and repurposing it as a podcast will make them successful. I have never seen a podcast. Well, it's very rare that I've seen a broadcast radio show that's like a 3-hour everyday podcast that's a successful podcast. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Rob, I think the talk folks, you can talk about the Sean Hannitys, the Rush Limbaughs, all of those guys on that talk side, they have hugely successful podcast already, and they're all behind a subscription model. So I think your talking heads, the Mark Levins and all these guys that are these hardcore conservative talk show hosts who are doing these shows are large. You look at what Glenn Beck is doing with his new network, which believe it or not, I'm watching what these guys are doing. I spend the $5 a month just to be, not necessarily because I'm a fan of the content, but I want to see what they're doing. Because they've got these big brains, and they've got, some people say maybe not, but they have these broadcast folks that are they're 100% in tune with the way the space is. So I'm watching what they're doing. So, but I think the Clear Channels of the world, they've dabbled in it. NPR obviously has their podcast stuff. It's up. Some have made the successful transition, but for drive time, no. Your drive time guy, I don't know how. I don't think I would ever. I can't imagine subscribing to a drive time radio program. Maybe if they had someone on as a guest that I really wanted to hear, but I don't know. To me, it's really it's hard to. I think that would be hard to listen to a couple days later.
No,
Yeah,
I think you guys are both right on this. I am noticing more and more regular radio guys entering in the world of podcasting. But what I've noticed that they're starting to do is that rather than putting a 4-hour, morning drive time show on podcast the following day, they're taking best of clips and they're compiling maybe 3 or 4 segments from the show and they're putting it out as an hour and a half, 2-hour podcast available on iTunes, wherever. I think something like that could possibly work for a drive time show, but to sit down, download a 4-hour show, and then listen to it in its entirety, that is a very difficult thing for the shows to kind of achieve. People are not, as far as I'll talk about what I do, I have a difficult time downloading a 3.5, 4-hour show and sitting here for its entirety and listening to it on my desktop. That's not happening for me. In the car, you kind of locked in there, so you're getting bits and pieces of the segments. So you're kind of forced to listen in it for an extended period of time, whatever your commute is. But when you're on a computer and you could access 1,000 other things, it's an uphill battle for them.
And I'm a 2 commute show. I do an hour and 10 minutes, so I'm a 2 commute. If someone wants to listen to me only in the car, they have the average commute time is 30 minutes. So they're listening going to work. And how can I really capture folks for 2 commutes? I tell you, the content has to be pretty compelling, even on my side. How long is your guys' show that you guys do?
Well, we do. Most of them are 1-hour shows. So if it's a 1-hour show, we'll go into like overtime and we'll do like an extra 15 minutes, if anything. But we only have one show that's 2 hours.
And I would be curious.
That's more of a comedy-based show. It's a Friday night call-in show. So there's always content. People are calling in.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this, Todd, because you've been around from the beginning. When I started downloading podcasts, I was a big fan of radio. So if I would download a podcast and it was under 2 hours, I would kind of cringe a little bit. I'm like, oh, it's a little too short because my brain was conditioned to listen to, morning drive time, 3 to 4 hours.
Right.
Like a Howard Stern or an Opie and Anthony or whatever the morning drive time guy is. Now, when I go to download a podcast and I see that it's like 3 hours, I automatically get turned off to it.
Yeah.
So my
too much
brain,
content.
I mean, iTunes and all these podcasting directories have kind of reconditioned the way I think as far as a radio show is supposed to go and a podcast is supposed to go. Where when I see 3 hours, I don't want to listen because it's way too long.
Yeah.
I think even in the very beginning, the premise was you should be 30 minutes. I always bucked the norm from the very beginning. I didn't really follow the rules. Has it hurt me over the long run?
No.
Well, you don't know. You don't know. What would have happened if I'd have made the show 40 minutes or 30 minutes from the get-go? Would I be bigger? Hasn't hurt Leo. Leo does, my God, he does whatever. I think he does whatever he wants to do from a time standpoint. I think they have certain constraints. But I think the average, and it's, again, you have a fan, the fans of your show, as long as you're addressing them and engaging them and talking to them and have some, and you guys have a little bit of advantage here on the East Coast. You can record during maybe a time in the day that it's, you get more fan engagement. For me, if I want to have fan engagement, I have to do my show at noon or 10 o'clock. And I just can't. That's middle of the workday for me. So, I think the show is whatever. I guess the thing is, I don't really care about the length. As long as the content's good, I'll listen.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I get asked this question all the time. People that are starting a podcast, they go, should it be an hour? Should it be an hour and a half? Should it be 2 hours? What should I do? And I tell them, whatever you're comfortable with. If you have a 1-hour show and you just happen to do 45 minutes that week, you know what? Don't beat yourself over the head with the fact that you end the show 15 minutes early. It's what you got in. What's better, to have a really tight 45 minutes and it's a great show, or have that 15-minute lull period where there's not much happening?
Right.
That could kill a show. I would rather listen to a very good 45-minute show than a okay 1-hour show.
Yeah,
Well, and it also should be driven by what the content is too, and that's one thing that the podcast area does well is it gives you the flexibility to, if a particular topic that you want to cover on your show, it really requires more time, you can take that time, right? And I think I think that there's, you can kind of shoot for a target. I did this, for a broadcast radio show myself for many years. I mean, I had to cut my show up into 6 pieces and do it down to the second. So I've lived in that world, but I've also lived in the world of looking at a topic and I want to deep dive on that topic because that's the right thing to do. I mean, so once you start down this path, if you spend 10 minutes with a topic that you should really spend, a half an hour with, you're shortchanging your audience. So I think, content is a huge driver of the length as well, I believe, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and it's something that you learn how to kind of space stuff out. You're not going to, going into a podcast and starting a podcast, you're not going to really have the concept of, okay, I got to dedicate 10 minutes to this or 15 minutes to this. I've been doing this for a couple of years, and I still have a problem breaking out segments when I have an ad break coming out.
Right.
If I'm doing What the Tech with Paul Thurrott,
Yep.
Our biggest problem is, okay, when do we stop this conversation right now to go to the next segment?
Right.
Because sometimes we're talking about it for 35 minutes, and I'm go, oh my God, we're almost done with the show. We got another 20 minutes left. I've done no ads.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's stuff that you learn.
And what I've done on my show is I program the ads in certain spots. I have a certain format I follow. And anyone that listens to like more than 2 shows of my show knows the format. It's not hard to figure out. But I did that from the beginning knowing that I had to pay the bills. And, so it can be tough. If I had example, we don't run ads on this show. We currently don't. But I would imagine it would be much, much more difficult in the same situation you're running into. Basically, where do I find a break? Okay, stop, guys. We need to run an ad spot here, and then it just kind of. You're right. I think it breaks up the flow. When you're on your own, you can kind of in your brain, you can mentally process where you're gonna stick that ad spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can kind of slow it down at your own pace. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let me talk just a few seconds about glass. I'm not going to put them on because it makes me look even more dorky than I already am. I have found that a ball cap wearing glass with the shades is the best way. And I don't get too many strange looks. But yesterday, my wife said, let's go to the beach. And it was one of those, yes, dear, type of, responses. That's because she said we're going. And so I thought, okay, good time. Maybe if I catch your kids doing certain things, I can record something on the fly. So I made sure glass was charged, which is a big deal, and rolled out of here. And we went down to the beach and set things up. And we were going to do some barbecue too. So we took we got a mini hibachi grill we took with us. And so I'm getting the grill ready, getting set up. And there was a party next to us that had teenagers. So it was I would say 12 to 15-year-old, and it was a girl's birthday party. So it was like 40 screaming girls, teenage girls in bikinis. And here I am, the 50-year-old guy in the next segment over wearing glass. And I tell you, I really felt uncomfortable. I didn't want to even look over there for fear that someone was going to come over and say, what are you doing? And so what I ended up doing was taking glass off and putting it in my backpack until their party kind of subsided and they went to the beach, and I put it back on, and I was able to take some pictures of my wife and kids and some short video clips. It was cool, but it was, I had my own creep factor. I was like, oh man, this is not good. Some father's going to come over here and, glass will be a permanent indentation in my...
It's going to do you in, huh?
So one thing I'm learning very, very quickly is until people get used to this technology, there is a time and there is a place. And you have to be selective and smart. And but at the same point, if I was a perv, there would have been every opportunity for me just to tap the side of my face, and I could have took pictures of teenagers in bikinis. And it's so you think about that setting. Glass may not be the best for the beach, but it's a great opportunity to catch the kids. Like they buried my typical buried my daughter in sand. So and then okay, you become more cognizant too of, okay, let's review the video before I push it to Google Plus to make sure I didn't catch anything weird there that someone will see, and then there'll be a bigger issue.
It's really a interesting product because it totally changes the way that we function. I mean, generally you take out a camera and you take a picture and there you go, but everybody sees you do it. Now it's like, boom, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
I just took a picture.
One thing you'll notice, though, is if the way glass sits on your head, in order to get the picture right, you almost have to kind of lean down and get this runner-esque pose, because you have to aim it, to get it right. Otherwise, I was like cutting the top of people's heads off and stuff, because when you say, okay, glass, take a picture, it's now. It's done. It's picture's taken. There's no, okay, let me get it framed right and click. It just does it. So, from a media standpoint, I'm thinking to myself, okay, what can I use glass for? And I'm part of the thing that I want to do is I travel a lot. So I'm going to, when I'm going places, if I see something cool or I'm somewhere, that's where I'm going to record segments. Now, and I've also thought about food. And my wife and I have done a little food blog, not a big one. And I'm not even going to say its name because it's that unknown. But we do a little food blog, and I thought, well, this would be kind of cool if I wear glass to a restaurant, and every time it's okay, grab the camera, let's take a picture of the food. Well, if I can just point my head down and take a picture, it's done, and then we can also make comments right there live, what we think about the presentation, what we think about the food taste, all that stuff will be clipped together, and I never have to take my hands really off the fork and knife except to activate glass. So I think there's going to be some of those types of activities are going to be really cool to do with it from a media standpoint. I'm really, really excited about it. The audio, though, is going to be the biggest challenge. Is we're dealing with a microphone that's on the side of your head. So I'm sure in New York you're seeing your fair share of people wearing it, but here it's a novelty. So my biggest thing,
I've seen, only 2 or 3 people. I haven't seen too many.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't seen many of them either. Yeah.
So what happened?
You know what's funny? I saw one guy. He was walking around within the city, and people looking at him like he's a leper. I mean, like people are they're weirded out by the whole thing.
Yeah. The biggest question I get is, and after I explain it to him, the biggest question I get is, can you record just anything at any time? Is this being recorded right now? And I'm like, no, it's not. And then, I basically take them off and put it on people's heads. And once they see the menu, and the menu is, click, it comes up, says Google, okay, glass. You say, okay, glass. And then it comes up a little menu, says take a picture. It takes a picture. So you have to verbalize it, or you can touch on the side of it and do it. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, I think once people explore the menu interface, they're going to say, okay, this is not what I thought it was. And maybe they will not be so creeped out or so concerned about the privacy issues, because it takes direct actions in order to initiate something on it. You could be very stealth. You could come up and touch and scroll forward and down and take the picture. You could do that if you wanted to. But I can also pull my cell phone out and take a picture too. So I don't know. I think we'll see. We'll see over time how public's acceptance is of glass. It doesn't make by the way, when it takes a picture, it doesn't just make a noise. Now, of course, my iPhone doesn't either. There's nothing that's really that discernible. So,
Todd, it seems like if you're kind of resisting using these things a lot, I can just imagine what an everyday non-geek person would think about these things. They wouldn't even consider it probably. So I don't know. I mean, I think we may be in the ballpark of the Bluetooth kind of phone thing, right? That people had on the side of their faces for a while, and then it became uncool to have on, and that could be what happens with this. Yeah. Also, did you see the other glass that's being sold right now? It's called the Recon Jet. Yeah, I put a link to it in the chat room.
Okay. Yeah, it's in the chat room. I can't click on it. It's on another computer. But let me.
Oh, okay.
I was going to show you guys something else. I mean, you're going to love this. So, I think though it has great utility. Okay, for example, going for a drive and getting directions. That was really, really slick. And asking it to and basically I was got in the area where I was, and I couldn't quite remember where the outlet was. We were going to a store, and I said, basically did the map commands, and it gave me a list of 2 or 3 stores in the area, and I clicked the one that I know we needed, and boom, it got me right in. And it saved me like having to stop and break out my phone, and I was able to do that at a stoplight versus, see if I can find this post. You guys are going to love this. Yesterday, here we go. Let me bring this up on the screen. Now, yesterday, I got a text from a buddy of mine, and he says, I'm going to get glass. I'm going to Toys R Us to get glass. So here's glass with a laser and everything. So
well, this one shoots lasers.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow.
But so the guys have been teasing me that's here in Hawaii because I'm one of just a couple of people that have them here. So yeah. But yes, the other company that does glass, Rob, what are they doing?
Well, it's a similar kind of thing. It's at jet dot. It's pretty long. So,
what's the?
Can you see it in the chat room and then type it into your? It's back at 9:43.
You could just Google Recon Jet.
Yeah.
Yeah, Recon Jet. That's what I do.
Yeah. Have you seen these, Andrew?
Yeah. It seems like this is more for someone that.
Oh yeah, I've seen these.
Yeah, like somebody
Like
that likes to ride a
biker.
bike or that kind of stuff, right?
And I think their implementation doesn't look too bad. And I think it's definitely designed. This company makes cameras for folks that do sporting, a lot of sporting gear. So, but how much are they? $4.99. So your order ship first come first serve. First delivery beginning December 13. Pilot edition $4.99 through July 21st. Everyone else pays $5.99. I still think that price is high. I think the price has to be below below $400. Yeah, this is.
Well, I'm sure it will be. It's just a premium right now because it's all new, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Have you experienced the headache that some people are complaining about with Google Glasses?
No, but the challenge I have is that even though I can use them fine, I wear glasses. I have both a reading prescription and a long view, a far and near sight prescription. So I'm fine wearing glass during the day, long as I'm driving is not going to work for me. Wearing glass until they get the prescription lens, which I'm being told is going to come, that will fit to the current model. Until they get that done, I'm, basically it's going to be one of those things. I'll wear them when I'm walking or if I'm riding and if I'm not the driver. But I can see the screen fine, and it's just like anyone else wearing. At least for me, my experience has been anyone else is going without their glasses, and depending on your prescription level, which mine isn't that high. It's I have a pretty low prescription value, but still, I think if I wore them all day, I'd probably end up with a headache just because of the focus issue from, just the fact I'm not wearing glasses. So,
so what do you think of it overall? Like, do you think this in its current version is something that they're going to be able to release to the to the public? Is this something that people are going to want, or is this still very niche and geeky?
I think it's going to be niche and geeky, but I think they're going to sell a lot of this. The one thing I found really cool was I had it. Well, depending how many Twitter followers you have, it may not be totally cool because it now it just gives you your entire stream. And I basically sent a comment back to the Twitter folks, says I only want someone that's replying to a tweet that I made. I want to compose and reply to ats. I don't want to see the entire stream, so I had to shut it off. But from a text standpoint, the voice recognition, it's pretty good. And I was able, and it's as good as Android. However, what do you think of the voice recognition in Android? It's that good. So I was able to get a text from my wife and then basically click it once to reply, and I was able to speak. It was able to do it, and I hit send, and that for me was a real cool utility part of it. Some of the app stuff, Headline News, New York Times stuff, they don't shove a lot of stuff at you, but they do give you stuff that's important, like the breaking news yesterday of the Trayvon case where the guy was found not guilty. That came in. That type of stuff, it was cool because it just, I was able to, as soon as I clicked on it and activated it and slid back one, I knew there was a new announcement. It doesn't ding you in your ear every time something new is coming in, except for text. It lets you know when a text comes in. But I think the weakest part of the glass is the bone conduction, because sometimes I have to put my hand over my ear to hear it real well. Now, it might be because I'm a little bit older and I worked around airplanes for 25 years, so I may not hear as well. But it shouldn't matter for the bone conduction. It should be as good as my hearing is. But I think from what I've seen so far, it's going to improve in time. Would I have, if the price was under $500, would I spent under $500 of my own money? Yeah, being a geek, yeah. With my wife, no. So yeah, maybe early adopter. It's gonna be an early adopter thing for a while.
Sure. I mean, I'm more excited to see. Okay, well, this is a 1.0 device. Nobody's ever made anything like this. I mean, you could even compare it to what the first iPhone was like. A lot of people forget that there was no app store and it was extremely limited compared to what they did with the following version. The next version of this device will probably be something that a lot of regular people are want.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
There was a video that was put out about a month ago. Some guy did this thing where this could possibly be like what Google Glasses 2.0 will be like. And I thought some of the features that this guy was talking about, very easy to implement, and it's really cool. Like if I'm using my debit card and it's in Google Wallets, it'll tell me my balance on the head-up display.
Right.
It'll say, okay, Andrew, you have $2 left in your account.
Now, one thing I will say is this is a position your Google Glass is going to be in a lot. It's going to be plugged into the charger. They got to do something making it so that this position of the plug was good, and where they put it, but they thought you were going to be recharging while you're sitting on your desk. I carry a battery pack with me at all times now because I play Ingress and I run out of juice all the time. So where I would have put this plug if it had been me, I'd have put it on the back, so that I could have, totally went cyborg and I could charge this thing and still continue to wear these unimpeded. That's, my main product design thing initially was put the charger in the back of the device.
Yeah.
But they're not going to waste. They want to use that for the battery. So, but these things, it'll last you 5 or 6 hours, but you're not going to get much more than that.
Well, and Todd, I think.
Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think we're already starting to see other alternatives start to pop up. That one that I just sent you, and I've also noticed that there's a crowdfunding project called Glass Up that's already kicked off and started. And I think we're going to see a lot of these type of devices come from a lot of the other big computer manufacturers as well. From Apple and Microsoft probably, and others that are going to tap into this. And then also there's going to be other companies that have been traditional kind of glass manufacturers, glasses folks, that are going to jump into this fray as well, that are going to create a better version of Google Glass.
Yeah.
I think it's just inevitable that's going to happen, and that dovetails right into what Andrew was just saying is that this is the first gen product.
Yeah.
And eventually you're not going to be able to tell if the glasses that you're wearing on your head has a camera pointed at somebody.
Well,
you're just not going to be able to tell.
If you're willing to spend the money, you were able to buy something like that already anyway. You know, if you're willing to go out and spend $500-$600, you can go into stores that sell reconnaissance type products.
Oh yeah, spyglass, that kind of stuff.
You could have had that already, but yeah, we'll have to see where this leads. But I'm more focused on it from a media creation standpoint than almost more than a usability standpoint. I'm sure that the adult entertainment industry are going to be into these things huge. From a point of view cam standpoint. So, it's definitely going to have some interesting use cases. But
is it going to be a media consumption screen?
I don't think so. It's someone says, "Can you watch?"
It's possible they could.
You could. But here's one thing that I learned right off the very bat. So I wanted to give my audience almost first experience with these things. I wanted to let them know what I was feeling when I wore them. So I didn't record inside Google. They said I could, but I wanted to get the lowdown and everything. And as I'm walking out, I walk out of Google and I get into my rental car and I'm in an area of LA that I'm not really super familiar with. I was in Venice and Venice Beach, and driving the short 7 or 8 miles back to the hotel, I thought this is a great opportunity for me to get so first thing I get it fired up, I'm doing video, and I'm driving down the street, and I've talked while recording many times. I've talked on the phone, but what was running up here was not live video. It just basically said extended video. There was nothing else. You couldn't see the recording. So that to me was distracting enough that when I came up to my first corner wearing glass, I went to hang a left and I waited for light. Light turned green. I pulled in the intersection, cars went through, and I started to turn left, and there was a guy in the crosswalk that I missed. And man, I'm lucky that he was watching me, and I didn't go in front of him. I was able to stop. He was able to go through, but I missed him. And he could have ended up on my hood. So from that perspective, I got the immediate wake-up call that, hey, dumbass, these things, if you're not careful, you're going to hurt somebody. So my suggestion, immediate feedback was to Google, was that if they sense that the glass is in motion, that they should completely, when you're in video recording mode, they should even let it run, but turn the screen off. And then I would have been fine. Now that I've worn them a while, I'm not as distracted. I'm not finding myself always looking up at the screen only when I want to. But I would not recommend. You have to get used to these things with the first 2 or 3 days. But someone, I'm sure, at some point is going to hurt somebody with these doing live video while driving. I'm sure that's, of course, we've been doing live video in cars for a long time, but not necessarily. It's been a dash cam. What's those little sports cams? I think that's a much better, smart solution for recording video in a vehicle. But anyway, just my 2 cents worth. We've really got into glass. We should switch back to the topics here, but.
Well, I think it's appropriate to talk about it. I mean, if it has anything to do with media consumption, I mean, if it's just easier for a person to listen to a podcast or watch a video show on glass than it is pulling out their tablet or pulling out their smartphone and looking down at the screen. Now, granted, it's going to be a pretty small screen at this point, but I can see in the future maybe there's a way that it can be made larger in your glasses experience, right? Because right now it's this little tiny, little box down on the upper part of your your glasses right now. I mean, eventually I would think what we would want is the ability to expand it a little bit larger, right?
Yeah. There's not a lot of detail. Even if you take a picture and you go back and you look at the picture, you kind of have to really concentrate on it to see what you got in the picture. So it's not, you don't have this high detail because it's about this big. It's really not that big in your eyeball. Although it's, even without my glasses, I was able to see it just fine. So, and that's another thing too. Developers will have to design their apps to be very, very simple. I mean, simplicity is the key here. One word commands, that type of stuff. So Andrew, what's switching back to GFQ? You guys got some new shows, or just continuing with your current shows, or experimenting with some stuff? Someone was saying in the chat room earlier that Leo is finding out that some of his shows are not necessarily meant for his network and should be on a smaller network. And I had not heard that. Had you heard anything about that?
Yeah, a couple of actually, we picked up some of the shows that he had canceled.
Really?
So we picked up This Week in Radio Tech about I believe last November they started with us. So if it's not working on his network, I think a lot of these shows have a good niche audience and they have a significant audience, and they can go somewhere else.
So do you think it's purely a volume issue? Is it something where he's looking, for a much higher volume, or what?
I'm not sure. His audience is gigantic.
Yeah.
And really, he wants. I don't know firsthand, but I'm sure he wants there to be a consistent number across all the shows. And if a show doesn't meet those numbers, he can't produce them. I mean, the cost of producing a show from there is, I'm sure, it's astronomical compared to what we're doing.
Yeah, I know he's stated in the past that. He did a show called Game On at one point with Veronica Belmont and I think Brian Brushwood, and I heard him talking about that show. Is that it had a good audience, he said, but the production cost for it was just too high, and it was really a business decision that he decided that it really wasn't a broad enough topic that would keep a growing audience versus the cost of production, right? And that was a big reason why some of these shows have gone away, is that if there isn't that balance between scale and cost of production, then he's going to move it along.
Yeah, and I don't know what his number is, but I'm sure just to cover costs, there has to be a certain growth. There has to be a certain number there. And
no, absolutely, yeah.
And I guess, and it's true though, it's where there's advantages for guys like you, where you can pick these shows up and they've got good audience numbers, and you don't have to, you don't have the production costs that they do, and the overhead. And that's the key. Is the overhead is what kills anybody on doing these things. Is that show?
Also, you have to also put into consideration the time that you're putting into it. I mean,
right.
I have a number in my head too. If a show doesn't perform at a certain level, I'm going to have to cancel it because I'm putting in, X amount of time to produce the show. Then I got to pay an editor to edit the show because I don't do the editing. We have someone. So I'm wasting the resources that I could be putting on, that I could be allocating to a show that's doing well. So if a show, I'll give them, we do like a 6-month trial with a show. If a show is not at the level that it should be, we'll just replace it with something else.
Right. And I think that's one thing where, from my perspective, is I don't have to worry about production costs. Anything that I do or who we work with, it's the production cost is on them. And so makes it a little easier from a business standpoint, obviously, because I don't have to cancel anybody if they do what they do. And I just need to know what the number is. And that's becoming, believe it or not, more important to know what the number is. That's one of the reasons we picked up this recent client, is they were concerned about their numbers and wanted to make sure they knew what their numbers were. And we went through a lot of vetting to make sure that our data was right, and we could basically make sure that we were able to serve them, I guess, for a better word, from a service standpoint properly. And also validation back to their media buyers. We're finding more and more now where we're getting contracted to actually audit campaigns of third-party networks that we have really no relationships with by the media buyer itself, which ends up being kind of weird because I start calling my competitors and saying, "Hey, we've been hired to audit your campaign, and here's the redirect you need to run on your campaigns." And boy, these guys are flipping out. But I'm like, "Hey, this is not by our direction, by the media buyer direction," and makes guys nervous. So it is kind of an interesting position to be in. You were flashing green there for a second, Andrew. Skype
I don't know what's going on. My Skype does not like your Skype.
Well, I think what it is because there's a bandwidth limitation here, and I'm sure that's where the challenge is. So but it's what I am finding though is that on some of the stuff that we have been auditing for some third parties, the numbers have been relatively close, with the exception of one or two cases, and and that ended up being a major ordeal for that specific group. But I think the audience numbers overall, though, are continuing to grow, and shows that our networks that are small that can reach that target number. I think there's probability that can be reached. At least that's at least our perspective. What does it cost you?
There's also a sweet spot with a certain number, with depending on what the show is. I mean, if you're a broad show, then I don't. And tell me if I'm wrong. I feel like if you're a very broad show, you have to cater to a much larger audience than a show about Lost.
Right.
You could actually make pretty good money with advertisers on a smaller show that has a niche audience than a comedy show does, or a general news show does with a much larger audience.
If you can find the advertiser willing to pay the higher rate, the challenging is going back to the advertising dollars. They're all buying YouTube at $6, and trying to get them to not buy podcast. Well, you can't. Podcasts can't survive at $6.
Yeah,
that doesn't work on a day-to-day basis. Maybe a one-off campaign, but that's pretty low. I mean, that's actually bottom of the pit from a cost perspective. So Rob, what's going on your side? What are you hearing in the space?
I've been thinking a lot about platforms lately, and what is happening around how distribution aggregators are playing in this space now. Because as you kind of look at the space, you're seeing a lot of third-party apps kind of thing that are starting to take more and more market share, and I just wonder, and then companies like Libsyn trying to sell apps to individual podcasters, how this is going to play out over time. What's the best model, or is it always been and continues to be a combination of having your own app and being on all the aggregators? And at what point are the aggregators, the third-party client platforms, going to really be able to invest in those platforms to really fully develop the capabilities that I think podcasting and on-demand radio really needs? And I think it's a concern that I have, as well as I think about the space going forward. And really what I'm talking about is creating a more complete experience. And I think that the closest platform that I can think of right now is YouTube, that has created a more comprehensive and complete kind of audience and content provider solution, right? But it feels like that more platforms need to be designed to enable things like selling things, selling tickets, selling maybe special episodes, being able to combine other ways for content providers to generate revenue other than just running advertising. So I don't know what you guys think, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about those things.
I always look at it from a numbers perspective, and well, I don't want to disparage what Libsyn is doing. I think the average content creator probably is very disappointed. I would, if they want to tell me, if they would say honestly how their results have been, I think you'll find, well, I shouldn't say, this is what I'm seeing in stats. They're not listening on individual apps. They are listening on apps that are network apps. Like if GFQ had an entire, and I don't know if you guys do or do not, had an entire network app, I think that is a much better approach than have your own app. Now, some shows, they're large enough, they should have their own app. But that's like the 1%ers that should have their own app. The rest of the folks, if they're paying extra money, if they're getting it free as part of their service, great. If they're paying extra money for it, I'd have to really look at the value I was getting back, and those dollars being spent every month.
So as we move down that path, right, more and more content providers or podcasters get their own apps. Are we going to run into a situation at some point where there's a platform? Well, I guess that kind of exists already with the with the apps platforms, but an aggregator of these show apps that basically it's almost like a plug-in, right? So you have an app that plugs into a aggregator app. So you basically have control over more aspects of your show in a bigger, broader aggregator of apps platform, right? So it's more of a, do you see what I'm saying? I mean, or are we going to stay in this world of a big aggregator app platform that just has greater capabilities, right? Because one of the big reasons that people want their own apps, right, for their own shows is to be able to plug in other content, special content, to be able to sell that app, right, to generate revenue from the actual client download transaction, right? So anyway, so what do you guys think about that tug of war? And this is probably a topic to think about as we look into like maybe 2 or 3 years in the future here.
Andrew, what's your guys' experience been so far?
We have our own app that on iOS and on Android, but I notice we should push it more than we do, but I noticed that I think content discovery wise, people will find your content at a higher rate if you are on another app, like if you're on Stitcher or you're on TuneIn or you're on any one of these, Pocket Cast, because they have their own directories of shows. I think discoverability that way is much higher than having your own individual app.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's a nice thing to have your own app if you could make one. I don't think it's the best investment as far as spending the money and creating an app.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that we're looking at, and I don't want to reveal too much, is we're going to be making some changes over the next couple of months. You already saw we revamped the site at Blu-ray.com. We completely, top to bottom, revamped the site from a create standpoint. We've got this great resource now for people to go to. They're coming in wanting great content and accessing our services and so forth. But the explore portion of the site is going to go through its own radical transformation, and we're going to be adding some additional things. And as we move down the road, we do not have, an app that's used a great deal. And I think maybe that will change over time. But Rob, I think your perspective is, okay, do you give folks control within those? That's an interesting concept, really, to give them control within the actual directory or syndicate. That's interesting. The thing is, though, it raises a lot of challenges from a manageability standpoint in making sure people aren't putting stuff in there that they shouldn't be. But I think you're right. Being able to turn on modules as you want on a show-by-show basis, I think is probably smart, and it shouldn't be very hard to do from a program standpoint, or actually from a programmer standpoint of view. Just the back end has to support it. But
because what's the reason that people or podcasters want to have their own app? It's so they can be in control of the experience and be able to offer deeper engagement, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's lacking in the traditional aggregator platform is built-in conversational capability, being able to share links, being able to share other aspects of what they're doing. If they're doing live shows, if you look at like an Adam Carolla or these kind of folks, there's a big need for being able to connect with their audience at the point of consumption of that program, right? And the aggregator platforms just do a horrible job of that today.
But one
it's just
thing
not there.
But there's two types of conversations. There's the live conversation, what's going on in the chat room right now.
That's right.
And then there's the conversation and the syndicated content.
That's right.
That would be more threaded.
But both need to be supported somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I mean, that's a fascinating concept. But how do you implement it in a way that people are going to use it? Are users, are on-demand podcast listeners, what's their engagement level while they're listening? Right now, I'm curious to see, like, if Todd, you're releasing a podcast at 3 p.m. today, what is the engagement level on that podcast? Is it not there because listeners have not been conditioned to engage with each other during a on-demand program? Because obviously live broadcasting, the engagement level during a live broadcast is much higher than a downloaded podcast. Yep. So how do you get those people to engage?
The way I've always got them to engage is send me an email. But you could, at the same time you're saying send me an email to the show, you can also say, make a comment in the comment thread on the app. So you're going to have
and also
to
share links and things like that. So just like we talked about, these different glasses, we could push out those links to those listeners and they would have access to those. It's almost like real-time show notes.
Yeah.
But, but it also takes a lot of work to do this stuff too.
Yeah.
And that is the tug of war that we all have here. But I think that these platforms need to get more intelligent and more clued in to what the audience wants and also more what the content provider wants as well, so they can better monetize, because that's the big struggle, right? I mean, a lot of shows just can't seem to engage with their audience and be able to monetize in other ways other than just selling advertising. And not every show is going to be able to be successful selling advertising. I think we all know that. Well,
and I've also said for a long time that shows that the majority of shows are going to make enough money to pay their hosting bill. That's kind of that's just the raw fact. They just don't do the numbers. It goes back to the beginning of what we're talking today, is the numbers just aren't there. But also, I'm a realist. I understand that some shows will never get the numbers. No matter how hard they try, no how hard their content is. Sometimes the personality doesn't. There's just not this chemistry that happens. You're
absolutely right. I get asked this question all the time on, okay, how do I make money? And I always tell them, numbers first, sponsors next, last. It's you can't go into, you can't start podcasting. You know what? Do it as a hobby. Do it because you enjoy it. Don't go into it saying, you know what? I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to talk about tech, and I'm going to make $500,000 this year. That is a unrealistic expectation. Go do it because you enjoy doing it. Build your audience. Engage with the audience. You know what? If you're still enjoying doing it and it's still a hobby, then continue doing it, and maybe you'll be able to make money. But this concept that has risen over the last couple of years where, I want to make money doing this. Well, I'm not going to do it if I'm not making money. That is the wrong reason why you're getting into this. You should do it because it's a passion and it's a hobby and you enjoy engaging with people, not because you want to start making a living doing this. It's a very difficult thing to make a living off of.
I had, when I first started this endeavor, I had done a number of things. I'd run a bulletin board for many, many years that was a loss leader. I did it for the passion of running it. It got to the point where it was no more, it was, it had gone the way of the dinosaur. It basically had moved on. And then I was involved in a couple of other things. And I've always dabbled in having a little business or something. And everyone has the dream of making it rich, right? Making it large, getting, hitting the lotto. Everyone has that dream. So when I started this content from a little dingy hotel room in Waco, Texas, because I was there after having suffered a major accident in early 2004 that basically resigned me to a desk job instead of flying for the Navy anymore, I did it for the fun, but I also, in my brain, I know how compulsive I am. So I set myself a time limit. I told myself I gotta get traction. And what's a probable timeline? And so I said 2 years. I said, I'm going to give this thing 2 years of rock steady, hard creating the content, being consistent, doing it, and we didn't even know those terms at that time. And, you're talking to a guy that was never had spoken to a microphone, that was, basically an engineer by trade. So the whole thing was, okay, let's see what happens here. And we kind of found our own way over time. But so many folks now, when I get an email, 30 days, they've been doing their shows 30 days, and they're freaking out because their audience. And I'm like, dude,
you got to build it.
This isn't good. We live in a society that is 140 characters, and you can order something on Amazon and have it delivered tomorrow. In some instances, they got same day delivery. You can go, and we are this instant gratification. And if you can't deal with failure and deal with a small number of people listening to you and have the self-esteem to know that this is going to grow over time, you're not going to make it in this space. That's why we have such a huge number of failures. This thing, I mean, right off the bat, you got about less than a 20% chance of even making it to show 20 or 25, or episode 20 or 25. The majority of folks, they get to about 7 and they quit.
Yeah, that's funny you say that. I when I spoke at Blog World last year, somebody asked me to what's the average that you've seen podcasts fall apart? And I said, well, around episode 22. Most people don't make it to 22. If they make it beyond 22, then they're committed and they're going to continue doing this. But I've seen this weird trend where episode 10, 11, 12, 13 done after that.
Yep. And
it can happen actually even sooner than that too. Like about 5 or 6.
Too, yeah. I mean, if they make it a half a year, then they're kind of committed to this.
Yeah.
The way I look at it too is that if they're going to commit to it, they need to commit to a schedule that is realistic in building an audience. If you're saying I'm going to do this,
so let me ask you guys this. I'll ask you guys it because you've been around this for a while. Why this concept of I've been doing this 30 days now, I need to make money? Where is that coming from?
Because they see guys like you and me that are, semi-successful, I guess, or successful.
Yeah, but I mean, I've been doing this for 4 years, and I never went into it saying I'm going to make money doing this. I did it because I got laid off from my job, and I enjoyed doing a podcast. I was a fan of radio. It just so happened that I got contacted by an advertiser, and they said, well, we want to take out an ad. I'm like, well, I guess you can make money doing this. It's such a building process where it's almost like this old school radio mentality. I'm going to show up, I'm going to turn the mic on, and I'm going to take a paycheck. And that has been gone since the 80s. That concept does not exist even in traditional radio, where a guy shows up, does his show, turns it off, and goes and collects his paycheck. There's so much more. There's user engagement on Twitter, user engagement on Facebook. You have to do contests. You have to do all this stuff to create an audience. You can't just show up and turn his light on and expect people to show up.
Here was my thought process, and I basically looked at this at the very beginning as a business, and what you find today is there's definitely three types of characters that hasn't changed in since this thing's been going. You've got the hobbyists, you got the guys in the middle of the road that are doing this that want to make some money, but they're not really heavy into the the business part of it, and you got the other portion like you and me that this is a business for us and we're serious about it. So for me, when I started doing my show, I started in October of 2004, and I didn't get my first. Well, I got a paycheck for my book, but that was it was a special circumstance. But my first real podcast paycheck came in about August of 2005, so 10 months. And the paycheck wasn't large. As a matter of fact, I didn't know how much to charge for an advertiser. I had GoDaddy on. They started from the very beginning. I think I'm safe to say what they were paying me at that time. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm under NDA. In other words, first of all, it was a 3-figure digit. It was a 3 Three figures is what it was. It wasn't 4, it was 3. So that gives you an indication, and it was not a high 3. It was a mid-range 3. So that was for a month. That was for 8 episodes, and I was ecstatic. I covered all my hosting bills, everything. And then I've told this story many, many times, is after the first 90 days, they came back to me and said they wanted to renew, and they made a mistake of telling me how the results were. And I said, I'm delivering much more value than I thought I was, and I need to charge more. And I did. And I went into a different sponsorship level at that point. But I also had the numbers. I had the audience to back a higher sponsorship level. Now, why does GoDaddy stay and be a sponsor every month on my show? It's because I deliver. They don't do it because they like me. They do it because I'm able to engage and deliver new customers. That my entire, I have to deliver new customers. It's not repeat customers. I have to deliver new customers. And that's how I keep getting the sponsorship renewed. If I'm low a month, they let me know. They tell me, hey, we're a little low last month. Need to kick it up and make sure that you're working hard and get the numbers up. And if I was to slack off and have 2 or 3 months of low numbers, they would. It's a business for them. They would not continue to sponsor my show no matter what. It'd be over.
Todd, I think, let me give you a little outside observation about your GoDaddy sponsorship.
Yeah.
Is that I think what's happened with what you've done there, and this is just observation from the outside, is that you've created a large number of people that have been exposed to your show that know that GoDaddy is consistently advertising on your show. And you have on your website, you go to the front page of your website, GoDaddy promo codes.
Yep.
Right? People hear that you have promo codes, and they go to your promo codes page when they want to buy something, right?
Yep.
So
they know it's there.
They keep coming back year after year because they know that you have the promo codes.
But remember, my performance numbers are not met on renewals. My performance number are delivered.
Yeah. On new people coming and buying different products and different domains
no.
at GoDaddy, right?
New customers that have never bought a product before.
Oh, entirely new people.
New.
Okay.
That's where.
Okay, not repeat buyers.
I'm sure the repeat feeds into it, but my performance based on when I get critiqued is based on new customers.
Okay. Well, I'm sure also, if you think about advertising and podcasts is a lot about name awareness and branding, right?
Yeah.
And you think about that during any particular chunk of time when you're running an advertising spot in your podcast, you're going to pick up a few people, but there's a delayed effect, right? So you have this accumulated delayed effect so that your audience, maybe at the time when they heard your promo code, they didn't have a need.
Right.
But that came a month or 2 months or even a year into the future, there was a need, they thought of you.
And that's probably very true, Rob, from that perspective. And believe me, I look at the SEO as well on those GoDaddy codes because I have to use every trick in the book to make sure my numbers stay there. Mm-hmm. If they get it during the show, fantastic. If they find it via Google, that's even better.
I mean, it's the same as a billboard. You're driving down the highway and there's a billboard in front of you for Coca-Cola.
Yep.
You're not going to stop the car, pull into a gas station to buy a can of Coke at that second. You're going to see that same billboard every day when you're driving to work. And when you finally go to the supermarket in 2 weeks, you're going to end up buying a Coke.
That's right. It's true.
Brand recognition, and it's embedded in you now.
Yeah, that's right. Todd, one thing that you could really do is just do a white paper case study on your deal with GoDaddy. And I believe that would be a really good case for long-term commitments to sponsorship of podcasts by advertisers. This is exactly the phenomenon that you've learned and seen firsthand with GoDaddy.
I have a white paper with that exact data. We do provide that.
Do you?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, that's probably helping you a lot.
But also, you got to be most advertisers. They're used to advertising, and we're getting long here, so we'll have to watch the time. But most advertisers are used to radio and TV, and they want to see immediate results. There's not too many advertisers that buy into the long-term effect of advertising on a single program for a whole year. Some
Yeah.
fully get it, and those
Yeah,
that do will, and I think that's really the key here. But boy, I tell you, it takes a lot of, these advertiser buyers are under as much pressure as you and I are for job performance. They have to
Absolutely.
they got to hit their
Well,
numbers.
Yeah, it's fast results is what they want. It's the whole kind of on demand kind of link promotions that they're used to doing out there. It's not long term.
And I think if a company was smart, they would latch onto a show and stick with it and use that show long term from a brand building. And with the brand building comes the, if we can get them in that mindset that understands that this, and I tell my audience, and this is the God's truth. If GoDaddy it doesn't sponsor the show, Todd has to get a job because I have to pay the light bill. So the lights are literally being kept on because of the sponsorship. That's that's it's the truth. Now I would still do the show, but I would have to, dramatically change the way and I'd have to tell Raw Voice, you got to write me a paycheck.
Someday, Todd. Someday you'll get a paycheck from Raw Voice, right?
and don't get me wrong, Raw Voice compensates me in a number of ways. So I'm not complaining, but at the same point, I don't. Hey, don't believe me. It's when the sponsorship deals come into Raw Voice, I'm putting my own show on it. That is is one small advantage, but when they allow me to, when the advertiser allow me to. So, Andrew, what do you see then for the rest of the year? What are you looking forward to? Any big events? Any big thing over there and you guys that you're doing in your shows?
Yeah, actually, we have it's actually fascinating. We have two guys that are film majors. They just graduated, and they contacted me. They want to film a documentary on what we do here at GFQ and podcasting in general. So I'm going to be shooting with them for the remainder of the summer, and they're going to be following me around. They're going to be interviewing people. It should be fun, or it's going to show that I'm totally out of my mind. I haven't decided which one yet.
Well, I think it's going to be a little of both, but I think if they do the content right, it's going to show people that, hey, this stuff is a job. It's not, creating content is fun, but this is the fun part. When we stop the cameras and stop the live stream, that's when the work really begins, and
that's the worst part of it all.
Yeah.
Why do you think I stalled to be on the air? No, 5 more minutes. I'm going to stay on for 5 more because, you got to deal with the business side, and that's not fun.
Yeah, and, to be honest with you, if at some point in the future, if I'm able to get to the point where all I can do, if you get to the point where I just create the content and don't have to deal with the other, and then we'll call it the BS, I would be a very happy camper. I really would. I'd probably have a lot less gray hair. I got a comment from an audience member the other day. Says, Todd, one thing's for sure is I have watched your receding hairline for the past.
Todd, we do have a hair loss show on the GFQ network.
Oh, you do?
You do, yeah.
We do. Yeah. It's called The Bald Truth.
Oh man, I told my wife.
Spencer, that's a good show.
Told my wife I said, why don't I just go? I think I have got the noggin for a bald head. Let me go bald. And she just this is her exact words. She goes, she says, I can handle. Basically, well, she put it more bluntly. This is what she said. I can handle being married to a fat guy, but I can't be handled married to a fat, bald guy. I'm like,
it's all right. Todd, my wife and your wife have something in common. She told me that she married me for my hair.
Well, she didn't marry me for my hair, but I will tell you this: she doesn't want me going bald. So I will have to do everything I can to retain what little I have left.
Todd, and
you should check out The Bald Truth then, because it's a fascinating. Even the psychology behind it is just unbelievable to me, and how people are impacted by this.
By being bald.
It can also be really, really depressing too. Yeah. Because there's no cure out there, right? I mean, that's the bald truth.
Yes, there's no cure, but there are certain treatments that you could do to kind of preserve what you have.
And I am investing in all those things to preserve what I have left. So, you know, it's you know.
It's crazy. I've become this hair loss expert of sorts since putting the show on 2 years ago. We're now it's actually a very popular show.
I'll have to listen to it.
It was on the radio here in New York and in LA. So people still listen to the show, and I'll have people come up to me. They go, "Hey, you're Andrew Zarian." I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "You produced that bald show." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm like, out of all the things to be recognized for, I'm sitting at dinner and they're like, "The Bald Truth, I love that show." And they'll come over and I'll start giving information on hair loss.
Wow. But so what it is,
crazy.
Let's be straight.
Do they pull on your hair, Andrew, to make sure that it's real?
One day I'm just going to pull this thing right back and it's just going to be 3 strands of hair on my head.
We have a couple of generations now that are more focused on their health than my generation. I'm the last year of the boomers. So, we weren't so health conscious. That's very evident by the heart attack rates and the obesity levels and all this stuff. And we have an obesity problem in the United States as well. But I think what we're seeing is my kids and a couple of generations, that millennials and a couple of groups around there, they're really, I think they're much more focused on their health. And I think that probably the reason why that Bald Truth show is becoming so positive is that you can stay fit, but you can't save the hair no matter what. If it's going to go.
It's an epidemic of biblical proportions. I mean,
yeah,
that's his catchphrase, and I agree with him. I mean, there's nothing you could do. Once you start losing your hair, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
No matter how many kale chips you eat, it's not going to help.
But you can either that or you spend a lot of money to get hair implants, and I refuse. If I go bald, my grandfather had this landing strip down the middle, and I will refuse to have a landing strip. I will be bald before I have a landing strip. But anyway, I digress. Talking about hair on the New Media Show, everyone else is like, let's get the hell out of here. All right, so folks, Andrew, where can they find you guys? Where should people go?
You can go to the gfqnetwork.com and find all our shows there. We do about 15 shows a week, and everything is broadcasted live in HD and archived on demand on our website, video, audio. We're everywhere podcasts are available.
So gfqnetwork.com. Okay, I didn't know that. I went to the guys for Queen.com, like GFQ Network. That's easy.
Yeah, same
one.
thing.
Yeah, okay, great. And then, of course, so yeah, check all your shows. Now, definitely, I think I found a new show to listen to. So if nothing else, a little education and entertainment at the same time. Rob and I can be found here. It's Rob at newmediashow.com. We're Todd at newmediashow.com. So definitely send us emails. Rob, who we got on tap for next week? I think we're on a Saturday next week, aren't we?
Yeah, I don't. You know what? It's not locked down right now, but I believe I had Damian Berger. We got rescheduled. He's the CEO of What's Trending in the Disrupt Group.
Okay.
Down in LA, and he's been doing some exclusive YouTube content and stuff like that. So he's another YouTuber kind of guy, but he's actually done his show as a podcast. It's kind of been an off and on kind of thing. So it'll be an interesting conversation with him about how he's monetizing. It's a show with Shira Lazar, who's gotten lots of publicity lately for doing shows and got kicked off of CBS's podcasting efforts
Really?
A few years ago. So that's what's looks like is coming up for next week.
Oh, that's fantastic. And of course, you can catch the other shows here at Geek News Central, my show, every Monday and Thursday night. Don't forget the Gadget Professor, Robot Underpants, Langley and his gang that do their show once a week as well. Don't forget about those folks. But any closing comments, guys?
Hey,
Yes,
I wanted to
ask.
So on the show, what the tech? So was that your biggest show this past week?
What the Tech is our largest show on the network.
No, I mean just this past week though. All the
I did not check the numbers. Why?
I was just curious. With all the Microsoft news from this past week.
The numbers are pretty consistent, but a couple of months ago when we accidentally leaked a lot of Xbox One information
Oh yeah,
on the show.
that's right. Accidentally leaked.
It was actually, it was such an accident where I had no idea that we even did this. And Sunday night I had some friends over and I'm seeing my YouTube subscribers. I mean, like hundreds of subscribers coming in. And I'm getting tweets and I'm getting hate mail like, oh, you're an idiot. Or how could you say that? And I'm like, what's going on? And I saw that a lot of gaming websites picked up the story of
I saw it
the Always On. And it was something else. I mean, it was bizarrely crazy and interesting at the same time. That was probably our largest show. I think that show had about 250,000 downloads alone.
So
and that,
did you guys leak some Xbox information, or did you guys actually?
Paul mentioned some stuff, didn't he?
Yeah. I think he got into a little bit of trouble from that too.
Oh, that's the challenge too. When you're doing content, you got to be careful on what you say. Now, Rob, I know you can't say too much, or maybe do you have an opinion on the reorg?
I think the company's been moving in that direction for quite a few years now, at least from an internal perspective. I mean, I'm not necessarily surprised that this is happening. I think it makes a lot of sense for the company in the bigger picture of things, though I think it's just the beginning. I believe there's a lot more changes to come. And there's also a delayed kind of effect too, right? I think a lot of people focus on what happens at the top of the company, but there's going to be a delay over a couple months, 3, 4 months, 5 months of what the true impact of this change is going to have. It's not going to be an instant change. Because I know a lot of teams there are not really changing right away. So things that have to ship and get out the door before the impacts of that reorganization at the top really have any kind of an impact on the company. So don't expect big changes right away in what the company's doing. But I think over the next year, 2 years, I think you're going to see a completely different company in how it operates and how it looks and what it does with its products. I think it's really going to be a fascinating time to watch that company and what it's doing. Do
you get a new immediate boss or up the chain boss?
Well, yes. I mean, that's going to happen at this point. Steady is the course with the Xbox One. So, the company's really focused on trying to get it out the door on its timelines. And so there's not a lot of shakeup going on as you move down the chain of command, as they say. So things are going to be pretty consistent for a time before you really, like I said, before you really start seeing all of the tables and all the chairs being rearranged, because that is coming. It's just it's going to take a while before it actually happens.
Well, it'll give us some topics to talk about in the future, and we'll see where they lead. But we're already way long here, guys. So thanks everyone for tuning in to the New Media Show, and you can find us at newmediashow.com, or definitely come over to Geek News Central, and that's at least where you're going to get pushed anyway. So definitely check us out and stay subscribed, especially if you watched this on YouTube today. Come over to the website and get subscribed to the show. That way you can get in on the new media side and actually get this show delivered easily to your mobile device. We appreciate those of you that are subscribing. We're actually doing great. The numbers are up. We have a lot of people listening, so we want to hear your feedback. It seems like every time I talk to someone in the space, a content creator says, loving what you guys are doing on the show. And I'm like, hey, send us some feedback. So definitely email us. Let us know. That's important. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what you want us to change, who you want us to have on, too. That helps us as well. If you know a luminary or someone in the site that's doing something cool in the new media space, drop us an email. It's Rob at newmediashow.com or Todd at newmediashow.com. Rob, thanks. And Andrew, thanks so much for coming down on Sunday. Appreciate it. Appreciate the time shift for doing the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And I just want to say, take care and brush your hair, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. The key is brush. All right. Until next time, we're going to take care. We'll see you. Aloha.
See you later. Thanks, everybody.
Later, guys.